You know, when you think about the incredible complexity of the human mind, have you ever wondered how doctors and scientists even begin to navigate it? Well, they use a map. And today, we're going to explore that map, the ICD-11's official guide to mental, behavioral, and neurodevelopmental disorders. So this is it. This is the guide, published by the World Health Organization. It's called the International Classification of Diseases, 11th revision, or just ICD-11 for short. And its whole purpose is to create a common language for health professionals, all over the world. It's how a doctor in Tokyo and a researcher in Toronto can be absolutely sure they're talking about the exact same thing. Okay, so that's the big question, right? How on earth do you take something as messy and intricate as human thought, emotion, and behavior and organize it into a structured, universal system? Well, that's the massive challenge the ICD-11 takes on. To really get our heads around this, here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll look at the big picture of the guide and what it even means to define a disorder. Then, we'll zoom in on two major groups, neurodevelopmental and mood disorders. After that, we'll actually crack the alphanumeric code they use, and we'll wrap up by talking about why a system like this is just so incredibly important. So our journey starts in Chapter 06. This is the one section of the entire ICD-11 that's dedicated specifically to mental, behavioral, or neurodevelopmental disorders. This is basically the heart of the map we're exploring. And believe me, it is a very detailed map. Just this one chapter is broken down into 161 main categories. Each one of those represents a distinct condition. I mean, that alone gives you a sense of just how specific and detailed this whole system is. Okay, so with 161 different categories, there has to be some kind of fundamental rule, right? What does it actually take to be considered a mental disorder by this global standard? Let's take a look at the official definition. Right, so this is the official text, and you can tell right away how carefully every single word was chosen. This isn't just about feeling off or being a little different. The key phrases you really want to lock onto are clinically significant disturbance, dysfunction, and of course, distress or impairment. So let's just boil that down. For a condition to be classified as a disorder, it has to hit these key points. It has to be a pretty serious disturbance in how someone thinks, feels, or acts. It needs to point to some kind of underlying dysfunction, and, this is the big one, it has to be causing real, noticeable problems in a person's life. All right, with that definition fresh in our minds, let's explore our first major group, neurodevelopmental disorders. And just like the name suggests, these are conditions that show up during a person's developmental years, so anywhere from infancy all the way through adolescence. Now, this category covers a huge range of things, from challenges with intellectual development and language to autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. It's all about how someone acquires specific intellectual, motor, or social skills. Let's dig into a couple of examples to see how the ICD-11 adds these extra layers of detail. This is a perfect example of one of the guide's most important features, classifying by severity. So for disorders of intellectual development, it's not just a single flat diagnosis. Instead, the ICD-11 gives this scale, from mild to profound, and that allows for much more nuanced understanding of a person's needs. The guide also gets specific about the different presentations of a disorder. Take ADHD, for example. The ICD-11 makes a clear distinction between a predominantly inattentive presentation and a predominantly hyperactive, impulsive one. And this is so important because it means two people can both have ADHD but face completely different primary challenges day to day. Okay, let's shift gears to our next major section. Mood disorders are another huge category, and they're defined by patterns of mood episodes. Things like depressive episodes, manic episodes, or hypomanic episodes that happen over time. So, what's the main dividing line here? It's actually super clear. The defining feature of bipolar and related disorders is that at some point, the person has experienced a manic, mixed, or hypomanic episode. Period. Depressive disorders, on the other hand, are marked by depressive episodes without any history of mania or hypomania. That one distinction is the critical fork in the road for everything that follows. So we've seen the big categories and the definitions. But how does this all look in practice, on a chart or in a file? Well, the ICD-11 uses this really smart alphanumeric coding system that packs a ton of information into just a few characters. Let's crack one open. We're going to use autism spectrum disorder as our example. The base code for this condition is 6A02. Think of that as the starting point.
the general family it belongs to.
But here, this is where the system gets really powerful. See those numbers after the decimal point? Those are specifiers. They add these crucial layers of detail about an individual's specific situation. So, what does that point 3 actually tell a clinician?
And there it is, the system's precision in action. 6A02.3 isn't just autism spectrum disorder. It specifically means autism spectrum disorder with a disorder of intellectual development and with impaired functional language. That level of detail is absolutely vital for everything from clinical records to research to making sure a person gets exactly the right kind of support.
Okay, we've seen the structure, the definitions, the codes. It's complex, it's really detailed, but why go to all this trouble? Why does having a system like this matter so much in the real world? Honestly, it's hard to overstate how big of a deal this is. Imagine trying to do global research when a diagnosis in one country meant something totally different in another. It was a mess. But having this shared map, this common language, it changes everything. It means a patient gets consistent care whether they're in Cairo or Chicago. It lets researchers around the world pull their data to make breakthroughs faster. It helps governments plan smarter public health strategies. And maybe, just maybe, most importantly, by defining these conditions with such clarity, it helps all of us understand and destigmatize mental health.
In the end, this incredibly detailed map of the mind does so much more than just label things. It gives us the power to communicate, to research, and to care for each other more effectively. And that leaves us with one final thought. How can a shared language, one that's understood by everyone, truly change our global conversation about mental health?